Welcome to the shop. Today we're going to be looking at my lathe, and it's really a big mystery what this lathe actually is and where it came from, the history behind it. It's a import lathe from the late 70s, early 80s, and I'm really not sure where it's imported from. I have a brand, but the brand is really just a rebrand of some other lathe, and it's, well, we'll get into it, and hopefully one of you knows more about it than I do and can help me identify this thing, because I'm kind of at a loss. I can't find anything about it on the internet. Without further ado, let's get to it. This is the lathe, and as you can see, it's got really no maker's marks on it. It did have a panel over here that had the brand on it, which was Rockland. And it has another panel up on top that also has the Rockland brand, about as good shape as the panel that was on there. I've got the thing running at this point, and it was mostly there when I got it actually moved in here. It just needed a couple of little things to get it the rest of the way so that I could actually use the thing. I have cut a couple of things on this lathe, and there's still some work to be done. It's not quite there. One of the main things I'm actually going to be working on soon is coolant. I've done a little bit of testing with it, and there's a couple of weird things. I've put in a couple of hacks, and, well, it's just not quite there yet. But it's a fairly large lathe. If you measure from the, well, if you push the tailstock back and measure from the end of the tailstock to the face of the chuck, it's about 60 inches. So, roughly 60 inches between centers, and about 15-inch swing over bed. Now, I have a book that I think goes with this lathe, and it has some information in it, but I'm honestly not even certain if the book really goes with this lathe. I'll get some footage of it here in a minute, and we can look at it together. But it's really just, well, a mystery, because all I've found about Rockland on the internet is just about their 19-inch lathe, and unfortunately, this isn't that. This is the book that I have, and I think it does go with the lathe. It's got a lot of information in it that matches up with the lathe, so the only reason I say that I'm not 100% certain is because the seller listed this lathe a little differently than what's actually in the book. But I've looked up a lot of information from this book. I've looked up the New England Machine Tool company. I've not actually found anything about the Rockland lathes through them. And I've obviously looked up the Rockland 15-inch lathe. But we can tell this is an import lathe because a lot of places in here you see Rockland that's been added as after the fact. And we'll actually see that in here in the forward right here. And then also just further in, like into operation, all of this. Now, when I said that it's 60 inches between centers, that's about right. I think that it's the 1500 millimeter version. This is a metric lathe. It has a lot of inch measurements on it, you know, the hand wheels and all that, but it's all actually built, measured, everything else in metric. So, and this book has a lot of really good information. We have, you know, information on specs of the machine, and we have accessories. We have a lot of really good information in here, but there are a couple of things that are missing that I've been looking for, although nothing's really stopping me from actually using the lathe and continuing to work on it right now, because we have basically everything we need here. This lubrication section was actually one of the first things that I read. It has all the information needed to lubricate, well, to oil the machine, get all the oil filled to the correct levels, and all of that. And I did that. That was the first thing that I did, and it went pretty smoothly. There was a couple of little things. We'll touch on those when we get back to the machine. And there's another page in here that has the change gear information, and I may have actually passed it. Change gears for this lathe are used for changing between, well, just like on most lathes, different kinds of thread pitches, different kinds of thread pitches and feeds and all of that. There's some information here on it. We have some change gear ratios down here. More on the next page up here. I only have one set. I've not identified the set yet because I've not needed to yet, but that is something I'm going to look into soon because I do want to cut some threads soon. But I'm I should be able to make all the change gears I need from this book, because it gives information on how many teeth are on the gears. And then there's another page in here that actually shows the modulus of the gear and all the other information that I need. So we'll be using the mill to make the other sets of change gears that we're missing in here. Other than this, there's some really good drawings in here. There's some schematics of gears and other mechanics in the lathe. There's also schematics of the electronics in the lathe and the lubrication chart, which again we'll touch on when we get back over there. And just some general drawings of different parts of the machine, different accessories. This is, again, a very good book. I'm glad I have this. Without this, I wouldn't be anywhere near as close to having this well-running machine as I am now. But I would like to find an internet archive or something that has like a complete list of information on this, maybe some history on the lathe. I'm just, this has a lot of good information, but you can never have too much with these machines. Anyway, let's head back over to the lathe. All right, we're back here at the lathe, and as far as the lubrication is concerned, I was going to mention this. There were a couple of things that it wasn't really clear about as far as the actual oil. So for the saddle here, it has, in the book, it says that there's something here-ish that you're supposed to fill with oil, and I checked this and messed with it and couldn't fill that. It actually has a screw that's currently underneath the cross slide here. So if we move this forward, we can see it. And it is that big one right there. That is actually the oil fill port, and got oil in it. And I think it's working, although there's supposed to be a piston pump in there, and I'm not really seeing the oil froth up, but it's probably fine. I'll tear it apart at some point and take a look at it, probably after it kills itself. As for these hand wheels, there's some nice things. You've got inch and metric on them. You have feed for both left, right, and across the ways. It came with only the 4-jaw chuck, which is fine. You can do everything you can with a 3-jaw chuck and a 4-jaw plus more. You just have to indicate it every time. And, that's fine. It's just a small inconvenience for more features. So, these are all just normal gear selectors, and the quick change gearbox, RPM selector, all of that. And then down here we have the BP oil spill. And then the tailstock here is, I did some work on it recently and got it freed up. And right now it has an adapter in it to go from Morse taper 4 to Morse taper 2. Because I had some Morse taper 2 tooling, because I actually had a mini lathe before this one. And we won't talk about the dark times. But this is really all I have right now. But I'm planning on actually making some blanks for the MT4 taper that the tailstock has. So that'll be another project we're working on. It has a DRO, and the DRO has one axis, which is the x-axis here. And to me, I think this is the most important axis. Debatable, of course. But it is a little, shield's not really on there good, and neither is the axis. Once you got it set, seems to work pretty well, but I'll probably need to go in and tighten it up a little bit. As for tooling, I don't have a whole lot yet, but I've got a quick change tool post, the wedge style, and a couple of tool holders. A lot of these do have tools in them, just some random ones that I tend to actually use. The boring bar holder doesn't have a boring bar in it right now, but I'm going to put one in there. And a couple of little parts here that I was seeing if they match the lathe. They don't. So these are for the steady rest. They're supposed to go in between the ways and clamp it down. And this is too small, and that one's too small. So unfortunately, I can't use it right now. But I'm planning on making one of these with a mill, so no big deal. The coolant control is up here, and I have gone over the coolant system, and there is a pump in there that does seem to work, or at least it spins. It's not pumping very well, but there's a couple of things that could be causing that. One of them being that the plastic flange on the bottom is kind of broken, so I hacked together a fix on that. We'll go over that another time. As for the rest of the lathe here, it's still open up on the back. I'm just kind of monitoring it while I'm using it to see what else needs work back here. There's still a couple of things that I know of that we're going to have to fix. but right now I can use it to cut things, so I'm pretty happy with it. I'm just making sure nothing explodes back here. The box is what you'd expect for a lathe of this age. You know, it's a bunch of contactors, transformers, all of that. And I'll go over the box and do a nice video on it and try and explain what goes into these machines and what you'll find in boxes, what to look for when you're having a problem, all of that. When I actually got this, I had to rewire the box in order to actually use the lathe initially, because the switch here that starts it wasn't working properly. So I had a little e-stop button that I got off of something else and just kind of hung some wires out of the thing and like hooked it up here, and it was really sketchy. I don't recommend doing that, which is why I'm not showing the setup here, because it wasn't very safe. But so yeah, that's the lathe that I have. There's a couple other small features that we can get into in a more detailed video. This is really just kind of an overview to show you the kind of machine that I have here, and well, hopefully someone can give me a little more information on it, since I don't really have that much. And with that, I'll see you guys later. You really thought I'd have this video and not show the lathe running? Let's take a look at it. So, as I said, still some things need to be worked out on this, and with the speeds and feeds that I just randomly had set up on the lathe and was too lazy to change, that probably wasn't that great. But it works. That's all I really care about right now. I'll catch you later.